It is my honor to be a part of today's program. Thank you for inviting me. Our featured speaker is Consul General Kazuyuki Takeuchi, who will be speaking to us about the anime industry today. In 2016, Mr. Takeuchi served as Deputy Head of Mission at the Japanese Embassy in Austria before coming to Atlanta. Since joining Japan's foreign ministry in 1985, he has been an advocate of human rights across Asia. He has also served in diplomatic positions in South America, Europe, and Asia. The Japanese consulate in Atlanta also serves Alabama, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Here in Georgia, Mr. Takeuchi is building business partnerships and friendships with many local and regional organizations and educational institutions, including KSU. Consul General Takeuchi, we're excited about your anime presentation today. Thank you for joining us. After his presentation, we hope you all will join us for a wider discussion of anime. Dr. Amber Hutchins, Associate Professor of Public Relations and Assistant Director of Digital and New Technologies Education at KSU's School of Communication and Media will be joining us. Consul General, please go ahead and start your presentation.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. As introduced, I am Kazuyuki Takeuchi, Consul General of Japan, based in Atlanta. Before I get down to the points, make it clear that my presentation does not reflect the official view of Japanese government in any sense. This is purely my personal observation as one anime addict for last 50 years. Anime filming has been a commonly used method for storytelling throughout the world, and anime in Japan is, in this regard, not quite special and relatively new in its history. Actually, I spent my childhood in mid-1960s with American anime like Popeye, Super 3, Felix the Cat, or Tom and Jerry, while made-in-Japan anime programs were not as mature as them. Animation films or TV programs were definitely not unique to Japan in this age. In addition, in technical sense as well, Japanese anime is not so special. I heard that Disney anime uses twice as many still pictures in 1 second as many of Japanese works. What has made Japanese anime unique is not the format itself, but the philosophy behind the process of making up. As a business, I think the United States still leads the world of animation movie. Please go back to second page. Here I introduced 5 points. Actually, lots of big or small points make Japanese anime unique, but I just picked up 5 here. Not especially in its methodology or technical sophistication, but special in its process of development. I mean, collaboration with comic storytelling. Second, Osamu Tezuka, the grandmaster of Japanese comic and anime, laid the ground for comic and animation to go their own way. Tezuka's one of the most prominent achievements was his decision to leave his work, in one sense, unfinished. He left a lot to imagination of readers and the audience and provided them with materials for imagination to work. He applied this method to anime as well. After Tezuka, Japanese anime creators have studied and tested what to be actually described and what should be left to imagination of audience. Sophistication of anime storytelling is as follows: to describe human matters as human as possible by cutting out as much information as possible, leaving maximum possible to each audience. Here I stress the name of Osamu Tezuka. I cannot stress more the greatness of this truly genius comic writer and creator. Traditional comic strips are, in most cases, consist of identical rectangle frames. You often see four vertical frames tell one story. Each frame cuts out an important scene of a specific timeline and are connected like triple jump. I mean, hop, step, jump, and touchdown. Some call it a slide picture show type comic. For example, Charles Schulz did great jobs for Snoopy and Friends with this style. You see, it is hard to reproduce flow of time or emotional move on a static 2 dimension. The method Tezuka chose was to rely heavily on the imagination of his readers in comic writing. And for this purpose, he made use of his original style framing, ballooning, or so-called mob characters to express his dynamic images. Once readers understood his intention, this Tezuka method opened the way for Japanese comic to walk out of traditional slide picture show style comic strip. In addition, after Tezuka, comic writing became free from implicit obligation of setting touchdown for every few frames and became able to tell a lengthy story. A number of weekly comic magazines were given birth, and they allowed writers to make stories which continue over weeks or sometimes years. This made up the way to reproduce some of the works as anime. Since then, comic and anime have made progress hand in hand. After Tezuka and his colleague, anime creators in Japan became free from the effort to put everything on paper or a display, but able to concentrate on the effort of figuring out how to make imagination of audience work. Thus, beauty of intentional omission of key factors has prevailed and become more and more sophisticated. At this stage, methodology for simulating imagination and guiding people to intended direction became significant. Creators must not finalize his image in their work, but they must try to collaborate with consumers in finalizing the work. Omitted information must be reproduced in brain of audience. If successful, creators can let each individual consumer enjoy her or his own only one story in its best form for her or him. Next page, please. Whether Japanese anime is to be recognized as Japanese culture is a great question. I'm sure Japanese anime is Japan special, but I have to say no to this question. What culture means is fundamental question and almost impossible to answer for me right here. But for now, I take it the activities, I take culture means activities, expression, or part of life shared, valued, or loved nationwide, and subculture as those shared by smaller number of people and often of more intense. On the screen, blue around the people nationwide, and the orange part is a part of small people, smaller group of people. And subculture has been supported by that smaller number of people, this means. This leads to the structure of Japanese anime in business sense. Next, please. I picked up three peculiar characteristics of Japanese anime industry. One, extremely labor-intensive for handcraft procedure. Two, fragile capital base. I mean, 9 out of 10 companies under a $50 million capital base. Three, small size companies. 2 out of 3 companies are operated with under 20 employees. That three altogether means it is quite difficult to reduce production cost, and it has a quite a fragile profit gaining structure. And these all come from the fact that a small number of people support this subculture. Anime making requires a number of skilled experts. They all come from orange part of the former picture of people. It takes time and cost to train them as an expert, and this process heavily relies on their love for anime and anime making. There are scarcely any room for improvement of cost efficiency. Only big sales revenue changes weak business basis, but that does not come so often. And still, more than 100 titles of anime come up on TV broadcast every year. Next page, please. I touched on one prevailing business model of contemporary anime industry. Fragile business base lead to the business model which production side can count on certain revenue for sure. In other words, the production size involve other parties like gaming industry, music industry, or promotion industry, and they all altogether exploit core anime fans repeatedly. Let me show one model of a current trend, taking example of typical anime story. Girls or boys who love music dream of stardom. They make great effort with the friends and colleagues, compete with their adversaries, and go for success. This anime involves lots of music titles and voice performance, and this provides the production side with basis for multiple media deployment. They let voice performers sing, put the songs on the net delivery, and let performers appear on live stages. Not only anime characters, but performers themselves are their subject for sales. Competition in anime story are reproduced as smartphone applications. Lots of related goods, not only anime itself, but all performers are on sale. Who buys them? Core anime supporters. They pay for all of them and provide production size with funds for next title. Next page, please. I love Japanese anime and hope that as many of you as possible enjoy it. However, fragile business base always makes me recollect what happened to gaming industry in Japan for last 30 years. In the age of original PlayStation, Japan is cut above in the world of video games, I'm sure. As the game becomes more high definition and requirement for the development cost grow bigger, Japan itself became unable to offer sufficient market for gaming business. to survive. Now, gaming business has become borderless and been dominated by several multinational big companies. Small Japanese companies disappeared because of their fragile capital base. I don't want that happen in the anime industry. That is my desperate hope. Next page, please. Then I come to my final message. The last one, do enjoy Japanese anime. I guarantee it is fun. This is the most fundamental message, and I say it's a fundamental truth for everyone. 2, please try to pick up what creators avoided to present on purpose. There his true intention exists. Japanese anime is, I said, collaboration between creators and consumers. Creators expect consumers to pick up something by himself or herself. And please do not avoid that effort in enjoying Japanese anime. And third, this comes third, taking more time.
Hello, Consul General. I think your audio has just gone off, unfortunately. Can you hear us? Yes, I think your audio went off, but that's fine. I think Consul General was wrapping up. If Dr. Adriel, you can jump back on and we can perhaps maybe start the panel.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I would love to, Lola. Well, Mr. Takeuchi, hopefully you can hear me when I say thank you so much for an interesting presentation. Unfortunately, we lost you in your last few words that you were saying, but during your presentation, I was writing down a lot of notes because I learned a lot about anime that I couldn't find online this week. So thank you again. Until the Consul General is able to join us, Dr. Amber Hutchins and I are going to have a nice discussion, and you are more than welcome to send us questions as well. So this is what we'll do. So let me introduce her. Dr. Amber Hutchins, as I said at the beginning of this program, is an associate professor of public relations in the School of Communication here at KSU. She is a recognized expert on fandom, including anime, having presented research at several conferences across the country. Welcome, Dr. Hutchins. How are you today?
Thank you, Dr. Azriel. It's a pleasure to be here, and that was a wonderful presentation from the Consul General, and I'm excited to talk to you all more about your interest in anime, and you know, very exciting to see how the industry works at this time and what your professional and scholarly goals might be in this area.
So Dr. Hutchins, most of the people joining us today for this program are college students. And so I think my first question, oh, Mr. Takeuchi, are you back?
I come back. I lost sound again.
Okay, well, we're just starting the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're able to get your technical difficulty straightened out. My question to you, sir, is if you were giving advice to someone on how to start a career working in anime, what would that be? And then Dr. Hutchins, if you could pick it up after his answer, that would be great. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, As I explained in my presentation, it differs whether you start anime career in the United States or in Japan. I believe that the anime industry in the United States has been very much aims to high definition and high technology and quite a sophisticated style business model like Disney applies. At the same time, anime industry in Japan is so much fragile organization as I explained. So the most important thing to start anime business in Japan is the quite a general thing, but the love to the contents. Without it, perhaps you cannot continue to train people, collect funds, and find the sponsors and find the format. It's quite difficult in Japan, I think. And in some sense, workers in the anime industry has been greatly exploited as well, because they dedicate themselves for the work. So I think it's quite difficult, different if you start it in United States or in Japan.
Dr. Hutchins, if one of your college students came to you and wanted your advice, what would you say?
I think definitely the Consul General is correct that a love for anime is absolutely necessary. So immersing yourself in the content itself as well as the community. We're very fortunate here, especially in the Atlanta area, where we have annual events like MomoCon and Anime Weekend, which are very popular events. Another great event on the West Coast is Anime Expo that takes place in Los Angeles. What most people probably don't know, because when we talk about fan conventions, we often talk about Comic-Con. Comic-Con had an attendance of 130,000 in 2019. Anime Expo had 115,000. So it's very comparable, and we have a very large anime community in the United States. So there are a lot of ways that you can get involved. A lot of these conventions have panels that are specifically for people who want to get into the industry. So you can go and watch these panels, and sometimes you have an opportunity to talk to some of the folks who are voice actors or artists or producers of anime content here and abroad as well. Another thing that is possible when you're at these conventions, going around the artist alley, talking about other artists, talking to artists who are looking to engage in the community as well. And the folks who are in the trade fair are looking too. So making those connections, starting by immersing yourself, making those connections, and then starting your own portfolios. So you can do that. You can create a website with your samples. If you want to do voice acting, create a reel. You can take an existing anime and then dub your own voice over that and share that on your YouTube. So there are a lot of ways that you can kind of build your portfolio. Then putting yourself on LinkedIn, where you can follow companies like Crunchyroll and see updates for when they're hiring and what's happening in the company. So, when they're expanding or when they're looking for folks. So there's a lot of ways that you can really keep tabs on the industry, build your skills, and build your own portfolio to share and network with those who are experts in the community.
Let me ask you a follow-up question, Dr. Hutchins. When one watches anime, obviously you're seeing the actual animation and you're hearing some phenomenal voice work. But within the industry, what are some of those jobs beyond that, beyond voice work or being a good animator? What are some other possible entries into doing it?
I think that's a great point, that even if you are a lover of anime and let's say you're not an artist or you're not a voiceover actor, you can talk about marketing. You can talk about, you can look at careers in marketing. You can look at careers in communication. I specialize in public relations, and there are a lot of communication jobs that are open to folks in these industries. Any of these major industries will need folks who do other things. accounting. These companies need accountants. These companies need a lot of different roles that will allow you to engage your love for anime and also bring whatever your unique expertise is.
The questions are starting to roll into the chat section. Mr. Takeuchi, one of our viewers, Delphina, has a question. She'd like to know if you could follow up on what you said regarding the emphasis on the importance of what is not directly said in an anime story. Can you clarify what you meant by that?
Yes. How I should make it clear? For example, one of the quite memorable scene in one anime story is that a girl has been closed up without saying anything, and that stop motion continues for 1 minute. Everything the creator wants to pass on to audience, audience must think about it. That is what he avoided to tell and ask audience to think by themselves.
Okay.
That sort of thing I thought about.
Okay. There was another question that just came through. Since you are from Japan and know the industry well, what makes an animator stand out and become very well recognized in the industry in Japan?
I heavily rely on what I said, and I explained that the Japanese anime followed very much a special path in the last 30 or 40 years. And that clearly falls onto how we omit information and how to ask audiences to think by themselves in correct way. Cut above creators is quite smart to catch contemporary audience as their thinking pattern of contemporary audience, and he knows how he omit to think contemporary people by themselves.
Dr. Hutchins, Matthew McConnell has an interesting question. Since anime has now embraced a mixed media approach, and you a few minutes ago gave wonderful career advice, can you expand on that a little bit about ways to get involved with the industry through other mediums? And then Matthew wrote in parentheses, for example, phone apps or something similar to that.
Yeah, I would say that's a really great point, and that was a large part of the industry that I seem to overlook in my previous statement. But that definitely programmers are in need. Any sort of coding that you can do, that's definitely in need. I see those jobs for Crunchyroll and other companies that are listed on LinkedIn quite often, and phone apps, and because of, the Consul General really mentioned the crossover between the content and the merchandising and the video games that all go together. That's what we often call transmedia or storytelling across platforms. And so there are a lot of opportunities to do those other specific tasks that are necessary to extend the story beyond the actual film or TV series. So I think definitely there are a number of opportunities to get involved in that way, and that would be something to definitely take a look at the organization's websites for what they're hiring for. And even if you're not qualified now for those positions, that provides you sort of a roadmap of the kind of skills that you want to develop so that you can fill that role.
I want to change gears for just a moment, Dr. Hutchins, and ask you a question that is really in your wheelhouse. As a recognized fandom expert, can you tell us, what is it about this medium of anime that has made it so popular in the United States? and has seen such growth at these conventions that you talked
Yes.
about.
Yeah, I think that it goes back to what the Consul General is saying. I mean, there's the obvious qualities of the extensive work in the artistry that is completed. That these are beautiful works of art, really, and as well, just the complex emotional resonance. And I think I was telling you that before I saw Disney's Little Mermaid, I saw an anime version of Little Mermaid that was extremely emotional and depth of storytelling, and that stuck with me. I saw that when I was very young, and that stuck with me for a very long time. And then I saw Disney's Little Mermaid, and all I could think was how much it was influenced by the anime version that I saw, and that anime in general. And any animator will probably tell you that a lot of what influenced them, we see this in Disney and other animated films, that they really draw from that. We talk about American media as one of our top cultural exports, but I think anime is a fantastic example of one of our cultural imports that has influenced a lot of our media, especially our animation, obviously, but other media as well. I think that it's multi-generational. I think that, we look at animation a lot of times as something for children. This really shows how impactful it can be in multiple generations. So I think it speaks to the artistry, and that these are great stories. That this is an emphasis on storytelling and human topics that everyone can relate to.
Mr. Takeuchi, I want to ask you more of a Japanese-centric question. And I think you touched on this a little bit with your discussion of culture and subculture. How does the anime industry reflect the social norms in Japan?
That's a good question, and actually, anime industry has been greatly keen on adopting the social norms of whole Japanese people, and that comes up to establishing
Uh-oh. I think, Mr. Takeuchi, you're muted again by accident, if you can hear me. I think your microphone accidentally muted. Okay. We just lost his picture, so I think he's trying to fix it. So, Dr. Hutchins, I'm going to go ahead and ask you another fandom focused question until the Consul General is able to come back.
And actually, Dr. Azriel, I did receive a direct message that I just wanted to respond to, but someone asked me about using their writing skills for anime. And I wanted to mention that, there's a writer named Lauren Orsini, and she covers exclusively pretty much anime news. And she's written for Forbes, and she's written for a number of other high-profile publications. She's also written a book called Starting Your Anime Blog. And those are the kind of things that you can do to bring anime to your writing. So I just wanted to mention that because I think that's a great opportunity. So back to you. And it looks like the Consul General has rejoined us. So that was great.
Well, let me hold off on the question, and let's give Mr. Takeuchi a chance to finish his thoughts on the social norms of Japan. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, sorry about it. And today the connection has been so much fragile. I wanted to say that the anime industry knows by themselves that the anime reflects only interest of a very small group of people, not the full total of Japanese people. Thus, they are quite careful in reflecting adequate social norms of whole Japan as a whole. So they established a supervisory group for looking into the contents of anime and judge if they are reflecting smart social norms or not violating any social discipline. And by doing that, they try to incorporate the interest and discipline of whole Japan as a whole, not of a smaller group of people.
Dr. Hutchins, want to ask you a question about something Mr. Takeuchi said during his presentation, because I think it goes right into your fandom knowledge. Mr. Takeuchi, I believe you said earlier that a lot of the voice actors and singers who produce content for anime, they often appear live on stage in front of audiences.
Yeah.
Dr. Hutchins, is there something equivalent that we could look to in the United States that reflects that kind of fandom?
Well, I mean, I think that we have that fandom for anime here, and that's really what I see when I am when we're at fan conferences. Is we see the same kind of panels and the same kind of fandom for these voice actors. So that really translates here, and we see tribute websites. We see a lot of the kind of fan behavior that you would expect. So I think that really is truly international and global in that sense. So yeah, we definitely, these are stars. These are influencers. These are the kind of people that we look up to. And what's wonderful is that so much of the professional anime community is really willing and enthusiastic about engaging with fans personally at events and via social media and things like that.
Okay, thank you. We had another question come from Takuda Maeda, who is a KSU student in accounting, but he is on study here from Japan. And what he would like to ask both of you is if you believe the level of education regarding anime creation in the United States is catching up with Japan. Dr. Hutchins, you can go first.
I'm sorry, I was trying to read the question just as you
He simplified it for me. It's a very long question. So what I did is I direct messaged him to simplify the question. And it's basically, is the level of education regarding anime creation in the United States catching up to what they're already doing in Japan?
That's a great question, and I'm not sure about the education in terms of producing or even interpreting anime in Japan. I'm not as familiar with that. I am more familiar with media studies programs here in the United States in a lot of our universities and a lot of scholars who dedicate their professional lives to understanding meaning, reading the text and looking at various readings that we might have of anime, looking at anime communities. And a lot of those folks teach specialized courses. I would say there's a few of them. Lori Morimoto, and Miranda Larson, who's actually in Japan. Those are some noted anime and culture scholars. So there's a lot we can do to get that education, whether that's available to us at our own home institution or just something that we want to pursue on our own.
Mr. Takeuchi, what is your answer to the question?
I'm the same position as Dr. Hutchinson. I'm not quite familiar with the situation in the United States in turn. But what I can say is that up until early 1990s, voice performers, anime creators, all of them heavily relied on their experience. And no sophisticated system of education. I don't think that existed. But quite recently, a methodology of training voice performers or picture painters or organizers, any role of animation. The established methodology of training has been grown, and lots of educational institutes has been set up for that special role. And voice performers, the number of voice performers appears year by year, and they go for singing a song and the stage, go live stages as well.
Yeah.
And so Now it's also a business to educate people for anime role player. It might be like Berkeley Music Institute for jazz music, I think.
We're getting more questions coming in, and they seem to be focused on both career and education. One person, Dr. Hutchins, asked if you think it's possible living in Metro Atlanta area, if you can get work dubbing here, or if you need to be located out in California. At the beginning of this conversation, you talked about using LinkedIn to connect for possible career opportunities. What would you say to someone who wants to try and get started here in Atlanta? Is that possible?
Well, I think that you can get started with voiceover work here in Atlanta for sure, and that could potentially translate, and you may need to relocate. And I mean, I would say that in any with any goal in the entertainment industry, most of those folks, the advice from screenwriters and the advice from other, producers is that you really need to be located in the city where most of the industry takes place, and that is probably going to be Los Angeles. But you can definitely get some voiceover work here, and I know that sometimes, because we have studios here, we have music studios and things like that. So even sometimes some of the work that's actually coming out of Los Angeles, if the person doing the voiceover is located here, let's say they're working on The Walking Dead or a Tyler Perry show, they might go into a studio here locally to do that voiceover work for a commercial or something else, and then that's sent back to Los Angeles. We also have audiobook companies here that record here. And so doing any of that voice work here can help you potentially build your portfolio. And then when you find the position in Los Angeles that you think is right for you, or an opportunity, that's where you can send those samples to them and have those ready to go. So I do think you don't have to wait until you graduate or until you move to start building your portfolio, start networking, and really get your career off the ground.
Great, thank you. Mr. Takeuchi, forgive me if I mispronounce this person's name. Abina Banahene wants to know, she was interested in what you said about how small a lot of the anime companies are in Japan. And I think the question is, why do you think there's been a collapse of these small companies with a small amount of capital to help them? Is the audience just is their particular audiences too small, or is it just the natural part of large companies buying smaller companies through acquisition?
Yeah, in part it's because the number of audience has been limited. I mean that the orange part of people, regular customer comes only from orange part of the people in my diagram. And in another part, I said that it's quite hard for anime companies to improve cost efficiency, because most of their expense be allocated to the wages and human expense, which is not quite difficult to reduce.
Right.
So limited number of customers and limited prospect for cost improvement of cost efficiency, both combined. So it's quite hard for any smaller anime companies to grow medium to bigger.
And Dr. Hutchins, is that typical globally that more anime is being produced by large multinational companies?
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that across media companies, is, in any area really, is what you're looking at, several major companies. And of course, but I would say though, with streaming entertainment, with Disney Plus, as you've seen with Star Wars Visions, and Netflix has a pretty robust animation department. They've actually hired a high school friend of mine who previously worked at Disney and Nickelodeon. So you can see that there's a lot more opportunities growing there. They need more content. So while it might be more difficult to maintain smaller studios, I think that there still are some opportunities. So I would say, there's still opportunities for working in this environment. But we'll see. We'll see. Really, we are in a huge transitional period, especially coming from the pandemic. So I think anything is possible at this point, really.
May I take up
yes,
floor once
please.
again?
Go ahead.
Another thing is that anime industry companies themselves only target for a smaller number of people. So if they decide to target, make the target to people outside, I say other group out of Japan or even to all over the world, perhaps prospect would be different. But in turn, they will not be Japanese. Perhaps because the interest and taste of Japan disappears because they are targeting people all over the world.
Right.
And the Japanese gaming industry does disappear.
Yeah. And what you're touching on, Mr. Takeuchi, is at the heart of a lot of the criticisms of globalization and its impact on culture. Does it water down a country's native culture? And that is definitely a legitimate question to ask. We have about 4 or 5 minutes left, and there are more questions coming in about education again and how to get into anime. So let me ask you, Dr. Hutchins, first. Does an undergrad, this is from Austin Duffy. He wanted to know if a digital animation program such as the one here at KSU or one at any other university, are they generally robust enough, you think, to prepare students for animation jobs? Now, clearly you won't know every single program out there, but from what you hear through your studies and through the people you meet, are these undergraduate programs preparing the students?
So yeah, as you mentioned, I'm not as familiar with animation programs, and I think there's probably someone within your program who can really talk to you. But I would say with any of your programs, a lot of what companies are looking for is experience. So I think that taking internships and things like that, I think that's going to tell you, where the gaps might be and where the things that you might want to add. You might want to, look at other ways to get supplemental skills. But again, looking at the job description that you want and then taking a look at what you've done in your program and what you can show. So do you have something to demonstrate that you know how to do, whatever they're looking for? And I can say that, growing up with folks who did go on to careers in animation and comic books and motion capture and things like that. I watched all of them go from job to job, gaining more skills so they could finally get to the place that they were really looking to be in their career and the kind of position they wanted. So I think it's really about building those skills. And again, they translate sometimes across industries and across, types of companies as well. So I think your interest and your enthusiasm, just asking that question, says a lot about your dedication to it. And I think that's going to be the deciding factor.
The last question for today comes from Cameron Wynn, and Dr. Hutchins, I'll let you answer first, and then Mr. Takeuchi is our special guest. You can have the final word. Cameron wants to know what advice you would give for someone who wants to write or direct anime and how to begin that process of getting into the industry. Or you've done a great job giving professional advice, Dr. Hutchins. So what final pieces of advice can you give to someone like Cameron who wants to ultimately write or direct an anime?
I think that with any writing careers, I think doing it is what's most important. So you're in your classes and you're learning and you're watching it, but doing it, and whether that's doing it for yourself as sort of a test. And I think, you know, you can produce this content. You probably heard this a lot. We talk a lot about millennials and Gen Z and this great opportunity to create their own careers and create their own content. You know, doing it for yourself is a great start. So starting with a story, starting with a storyboard, starting with a one-page treatment, and then you've got something to show folks as an example of what you can potentially do, and you're building your skills while you practice. So I think it's a matter of you are a writer now, and you are a creator. So write and create and take it from there.
Mr. Takeuchi, you get to give your thoughts on that question before, as we wrap up today's wonderful talk.
Thank you very much for giving me a final word. And I'm quite excited to hear that many of audiences are quite interested in anime industry and business in anime world. And perhaps we have to go back to the basic, and everything has to start from his personal energy for his dream. And in this world of digital connection, perhaps virtually everything would be possible for fulfilling his or her dream. So please do not hesitate to go for new thing. And perhaps failure would not be costing too much. And one more thing is that please do remember that Japanese anime represent Japanese culture and the Japanese way of thinking. When we enjoy Hollywood movies, we always think about the American feeling, American way of thinking behind the movies. Same must apply to Japanese anime. Behind Japanese anime, there are a Japanese way of thinking, Japanese customs. Please do not avoid those Japanese factors. And please do accommodate it as a content of that anime. So perhaps your way of thinking might be a bit more cosmopolitan, and I believe that that provides you with a wider view. That's all.
Okay, those are very good words to consider. Consul General Takeuchi, Dr. Hutchins, thank you both very much for your expertise today in anime. I enjoyed hearing from you. I think our viewers enjoyed hearing from you and learning more about this exciting industry. To those of you who are watching, thank you so much for the wonderful questions that you submitted. I am now going to turn the program over to Lola with the Division of Global Affairs.
Yes, thank you so much. And also thank you, Dr. Azriel, as well, for moderating the panel. Thank you, Consul General Takeuchi and Dr. Hutchins. You guys were phenomenal in the panel discussion as well. And this has been such a great first Consular Connections event for us. We have launched a poll. And so if you all can see that poll and start to answer it for us, that would help us so much to make sure that we can continue to have such amazing sessions in the future. Our next event will be on November 11th at the same time. I've put the link in the chat. And so if you would like to RSVP for that event, it will be with the Consul General of Greece, and he will be discussing geopolitics. So if you're interested in that, please RSVP that way. Also continue to answer the poll. We're receiving a lot of different responses, so thank you so much on that. And lastly, I would like to mention that if you are a KSU student, there's a Japanese conversation table with the tutor, Jara Hamada. It's from Mondays 3 to 4, and it's in the FLRC Annex building. And so if you have any questions about that, please look into the Foreign Languages Department. They have more information on that as well. But thank you so much to everyone. For students, we have an opportunity at 1 p.m. Please use the same link and join at 1 p.m. promptly, and you have the opportunity to actually meet and greet with Consul General Takeuchi, and he'll be explaining about what he does at the Consul General of Japan, and also you have the opportunity to ask him any questions. So thank you so much to everyone. We are so happy that we had this event, and we will see the students later on at 1 p.m.
Bye, everybody.